I only have 10 points today. That's all I have in the sermon. Just 10 things that I think we can take from this story, and I'm not even joking. So let's go for it. Luke chapter 15, Jesus is talking. He's telling 3 stories. These are called the stories of the lost things. The first one is the lost coin. The first one is the lost sheep. The second one is the lost coin. And then the third one deals with these 2 sons who are lost. The very first verse, Luke 15:1, says this: tax collectors and other notorious sinners often came to listen to Jesus teach. This made the Pharisees, that would be the very religious, very righteous people, this made the Pharisees and the teachers of religious law, the seminary professors, the Bible teachers, the people with the word doctor in front of their name, all those folks were standing there, and it made them complain that he was associating with sinful people, even eating with them. So Jesus told the story. So you already know what the point of the story is, right? Jesus wants to deal with the way that the religious folk are being bothered by the fact that he's hanging out with the non-religious folk. That's what's going on. And so he tells them 3 stories. I'm not going to read the first or the second story. Those are the short ones. I'm going to jump right to the most famous one. In verse 11, it says, to illustrate his point further, Jesus told them this story. A man had 2 sons. The younger son told his father, I want my share of your estate now, before you die. So his father agreed to divide his wealth between his sons. Now, who does he divide them between? His 2 sons, and he divides his wealth between his 2 sons, right? He gives the younger one half. He gives the older one half. There are a couple of things wrong with that story. First, he's not dead yet. Right? Anybody in the room, like you're leaving an estate to your kids, and you kind of hope they wait till you die to ask for it, right? Like that's kind of the goal. Like you kind of hope that they would prefer to have you over the estate. Anybody like wondering? See, I know some guys who've made this statement. They've said things like, I'm worth a lot more to my family dead than I am alive. Because you got a good insurance policy or whatever. Well, let's just hope that you can have that perspective. Let's hope that's not your kid's perspective, right? Let's hope that's not what they're thinking, okay? That is what this boy was thinking. He was thinking, my dad would be better to me dead than alive. I would rather have his stuff than him. Now, before I really go into this, and this is a little bit of a side note, this is a problem for Christians in our day. It doesn't take long to pay attention to Christian TV and Christian things and even read Christian t-shirts or even some of our best-selling books to realize that a lot of Christians are much more interested in the stuff God can do for them than they are interested in Him. And we want to make sure that we never become that child who's interested in dad's stuff, not so much dad. You know? Make sure you're not ever there. That's the problem this boy has. The other half of his estate is obviously given to the other son, the son we've not met yet in the story. In verse 13, it says this. A few days later, this younger son packed all of his belongings and moved to a distant land. He moved to a distant land. And there he wasted all of his money on wild living. He wasted it all. Isn't that just horrible? You get it all from dad and then waste all of it. We're on the next slide, guys. One on up here. Verse 13. A few days later, this younger son packed all his belongings and moved to a distant land, and there he wasted all of his money in wild living. About the time the money ran out, a great famine swept over the land, and he began to starve. Isn't it horrible when you have money, you feel like maybe you don't need money, but then you don't have money and something breaks, right? Like you don't have any money, no savings, nothing, and something breaks, and now you need money. That's where he is right here. He is a famine. He needs food. He's hungry, and he has wasted everything that was half of his dad's. He's wasted everything his dad gave him. The money ran out. In verse 15, it says, he persuaded a local farmer to hire him, and the man sent him into the fields to feed the pigs. Now, a young Jewish boy, feeding pigs would be the worst possible job. I mean, not only are they dirty and muddy and walk around in their own stuff, but they are literally and religiously unclean to a Jewish person. So the idea of being with pigs is just this is intended to say he's at the lowest of low that he could ever be. The young man became so hungry that even the pig food, the pods that he was feeding the pigs, looked good to him. And in that moment, no one gave him anything. Man, he has gone from riches to rags, hasn't he? He's gone from having everything, having a relationship with his dad, having the comforts of home. He's gone from having family and friends and beloved ones, and now he's by himself, sitting in a pile of mud and pig nasty slop, thinking that the food the pigs are eating look appetizing. That's where he is. Okay? In verse 17 says, when he finally came to his senses, verse 17, when he finally came to his senses, he said to himself, at home even the hired servants have food enough to spare, and here I am dying of hunger. I will go home to my father and say, Father, I have sinned against both heaven and you, and I am no longer worthy of being called your son. Please take me on as a slave or a hired servant. So in verse 20 it says this, so he returned home to his father, and while he was still a long way off, his father saw him coming. Filled with love and compassion, his father ran to his son. He embraced him and he kissed him. His son said to him, Father, I have sinned against both heaven and you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. But his father said to his servants, quick, bring the finest robe in the house and put it on him. Get a ring for his finger. Put sandals on his feet. Kill the best calf that we have, the one we've been saving. It is time to celebrate. It's time to have a feast. For the son of mine was dead, and now he has returned to life. He was lost, but now he is found. So the party began. Can you just, for just a moment, put yourself in the mind of this young boy right now? You see, he left his father and wished him dead in order to go party. And the party he went to almost killed him. But then he returned home, and what did they have for him? It's a different kind of party, but he had a party, a celebration. He's finally at that celebration that he sought to find in the wrong ways earlier. Meanwhile, now, all of us, we absolutely love that story. Right up until there, it's just like everybody smiles. I'm looking right now, like, man, I love this story. The honest reality is what I'm about to read you is the zinger. This is why the story was told. The next half, this is why the story was told. And so let me make sure that we remember that Jesus is talking to religious folk who are upset about the fact that he's hanging out with irreligious folk. That's his audience, okay? Meanwhile, the older son was in the fields working. When he returned home, he heard music and dancing in the house, and he asked one of his servants what was going on. Your brother is back, he was told, and your father has killed the fattened calf. We are celebrating because of his safe return. Now, just for a moment, who owns the fatted calf that Daddy just killed? The older brother owns the fatted calf that Daddy just killed because Daddy divided the stuff between the two sons years ago. Okay? So this puts you kind of in the mindset of what the older brother is thinking for just a moment here, okay? Well, just puts you in that mindset. It says the older brother was angry and would not go in. His father came out and begged him, but he replied, all these years I've slaved for you and never once refused to do a single thing that you told me to do. And in all that time, you never gave me even one young goat or feast with my friends. You see, he's forgotten who owns everything, hasn't he? Okay? Yet, when the son of yours, won't even call him his own brother, when the son of yours comes back after squandering your money with prostitutes and partying, you celebrate by giving him our fattened calf. His father said to him, look, dear son, you have always stayed with me. Everything I have is yours. We had to celebrate this happy day, for your brother was dead, and he has come back to life. He was lost, but now he is found. You guys, I think that we have to learn to value and celebrate and love comeback stories. In fact, we have to value comeback stories more than we value success stories. We have to value comeback stories more than we value success stories. And I'm going to talk to you all about that in just a little bit, but this is all about comeback stories. So I'm going to tell you 10 things I get from this thing that just each one of them is very motivating to me, and I hope that it's motivating to you, okay? So these are in a particular order. The first one is this. Every success story is ultimately a comeback story. Every success story is ultimately a comeback story. If you're like, you know what, I set out to do something and I did it, and I was successful, a lot of us would like to go, man, well, you really are accomplished. How about that? That's wonderful. That's great. You worked so hard. Good for you, but wait a second. What do we all believe about our own walk with God in our own life? We believe that we can't access air without His grace. We believe that we can't get up in the morning without His grace. We believe we can't do anything without His grace. So even when I, a recipient of that grace, do something well and succeed in a big way, guess what? My success story is nothing but a comeback story. Because I came back because of Him. He gave me life. He gave me joy. He gave me hope. He gave me endurance. And so I don't get to go, man, I'm such a success. Man, I'm so successful. Look at what I've done. Look at what I've accomplished. Look at what happened to me. Look at my life, my choices, my wins. Look at all that. No, listen, even in your most successful moment, it's nothing but a comeback story. All of our success stories are comeback stories. You know why the older brother messed up? Because the older brother thought that the younger brother was wrong and he was right. The younger brother did the bad stuff and he did the right stuff. The younger brother did the bad things, he did the good things. He saw the younger brother as the enemy and him as the winner. The younger brother is the loser and he's the victor. The problem is both brothers have the same problem. They have the same problem. They loved their daddy's stuff more than they loved him. They loved their daddy's stuff more than they loved him. The younger brother loved his daddy's stuff by taking it and running. The older brother loved his daddy's stuff by sticking around and thinking he gets to be in control of all of it. And when he's mad, he's not mad about, Dad, you hugged him. He's not mad about, Dad, I don't trust him. He's not mad about, Dad. He's mad about, Dad, I didn't get to do that with my stuff. You didn't let me do that with my stuff. You've never given me something like that. You've never killed the fatted calf that I already own for me. See, he's just as concerned about Daddy's stuff as the younger brother was. Every success story is ultimately a comeback story. And let me just say, when we share our story, we need to remember this. We need to remember that every success story is a comeback story. That when somebody comes up to me and goes, hey, Brad, you did this really awesome thing, and I noticed it, and it was really successful and really great. Tell me how that happened. I don't need to go, well, you know what? I just put my nose to the grindstone, worked real hard, and came on the right end. That's not the true story. It's not the true story. That makes it seem like it's just a success story. Like every Pharisee thought their spiritual life was a success story, and every religious leader and teacher of the Scriptures at the day in this story thought their story was a success story, and Jesus wants to remind them, you're not living a success story. You're living a comeback story. Because He brought you back. Every one of us are a recipient of grace. Every one of us has been forgiven. Every one of us been given an opportunity to try again. Every one of us, God has withheld His wrath in order to give us grace. Every success story is ultimately a comeback story. The second thing is that the gospel is all about comeback stories. It's all about comeback stories. Read everything in the New Testament, and it's all about comeback stories. It's all about someone was headed down that path, and God is bringing him out this path. Somebody made those choices, and they should have given them this bad reaction, but God saved him from that and gave him something else. The most important words in the entire New Testament are words like grace and mercy and redemption, which means that the entire New Testament is about comeback stories. You understand what I'm saying? Even Jesus' story is one who gave up his life so that he would die, so that on the third day he would what? Come back. Even the end of the New Testament is that we are awaiting because one day our Savior is coming back. You guys are getting it. It's a comeback story. You should listen to me. When you tell a comeback story, what's the point? The point's to get to the end to let people know about the comeback, right? We have to make sure that when we tell our comeback story, we don't focus so much on the sin, the brokenness, the pain, the stuff in the beginning of the story that we forget that it's a comeback story. It's not just a failure story, it's a comeback story. And we get to tell that story, and we get to value that story because God values that story. The third thing is this. If we value comeback stories, if we do, then we will think less about what someone deserves and more about what Christ has done. Let me ask you something, by show of hands. You ever deserved worse than you got? You can even point. You know, point, yeah, right there, I know that person. Yeah. You ever deserved worse than you got? Of course you have. You ever seen somebody else that deserved something and they didn't get it? And I mean in a bad way. I mean, they deserve to get punched in the teeth, or they deserve to get arrested, or they deserve to lose their job, or they deserve to lose their spouse, or they deserve to. Sure you have. We all see that. And here's what happens, okay? When we get kind of proud of ourselves, and when we get kind of confident in our own lives, I catch myself doing this a lot more often than I want to admit. What we end up doing is we start focusing on deserve. That's what I deserve. I've worked hard for that. I've really put in a lot of time for that. We call it the American dream, and we do different things, and we think that's mine. It's my right. It's my right. It always amazed me when you get a bunch of Christians in America all focused on rights, when the reality is that our entire spirituality is not based on our right. It's based on the fact that God does not give us what we deserve. He doesn't. We need to focus less on what I deserve and what you deserve. And when somebody screws up big time, we need to focus less on what they deserve. And we need to focus more on what Christ has done. So here's what I encourage you to do. You bring your worst mess up, your darkest hour. You bring your biggest skeleton in the closet to Jesus, and He died for that. And His grace and His mercy is big enough to wash that away. You see, let me clarify for a second. One of the songs we sang this morning mentioned that He covers our sin, and I get the sentiment of the song, but that's not really true. In the Old Testament, goats and lambs covered our sin. Jesus washes it away. It's not still there, swept under the rug somewhere. It's gone. Your guilt, gone. What you deserve, gone. What you should have received, gone. If you have put faith in and followed Christ, if He's your Lord and Savior, then those things are gone, folks. Not laying in wait, hiding one day to come out again and bite you in the butt and give you what you deserve. That's not Christianity. That's something else. Jesus took away what we deserve so that He could give us what He deserves. What only He deserves. We need to think less about what someone deserves and think more about what Christ has done. You with me? Let's keep going. If we're going to value comeback stories, then I love this one. This one's important, small town folks, okay? If we value comeback stories, then a person's mistakes will not be the first thing that we think about them when we think about them. Let's just be honest. We live in a small town. If you've lived here long, you know what it's like. Somebody goes, "Do you know Joe? You know, he lives down on so-and-so way." And the answer is, "Yeah, he got fired last year, didn't he? Is he the guy that got divorced right after he had that affair with Jenny? Is he the guy that got in that fight down at the bar the other night? And is he that guy?" For whatever reason, so many people, that's what they remember about somebody, is their darkest hour, their worst moment, their lowest thought. But church, if we're going to value comeback stories, then we will not know somebody by their worst moment. And it will not be the first thing we think about when we think about them. I'm not suggesting that we forget broken moments, and I'm not suggesting that we ignore it and pretty please pretend like nobody ever does anything wrong. That's not what I mean at all. But I am suggesting that I hope you don't know me by my worst moment. And I'm going to not know you by your worst. How about that? Because I want to value comeback stories. Again, the story is not how far you got away from God. The story is that while you were far away from God, God died for you to bring you close to Him. That's the comeback story. That's the Christian story. That's the story that matters. And so, church, listen to me. If we're going to value comeback stories, then we have to make sure that the worst thing we know about somebody isn't the first thing that we think about when we think about that person. See, here's what I think happens. I think a lot of us do think about the worst thing that we know about someone when we think about them. And because of that, we know that that's the way we might think about others, and we start to worry that maybe that's the way others start to think about us. And so then what do we do with the worst part of our story? What do we do? What do we do with the worst, darkest moment of our life? What do we do with our greatest insecurity and our biggest sin? What do we do with that part of our story, that part of our comeback story? What do we do? I can tell you what we do. We make for darn sure nobody else knows about it. We hide it away and do everything we can to keep it safe because we're afraid that if others knew about it, then every time they think about us, that's the first thing they would think about. We don't want to be defined by it. That's an issue of trust with us. And so church, and this is countercultural. I'm not pointing the finger at the Potter's house. I'm saying this is West Kentucky. It's a small town. This is the challenge that we face. And if we want to be countercultural, you want to really challenge our culture and the world we live in, then let's challenge this one. Let's value comeback stories so much that we don't think about the worst thing we know about somebody the first time we think about that person. See what I'm saying? That's very important. I want you to really ponder that and really consider it. Number 5 is that we will celebrate Jesus' redemption more than a person's success. This is important. I've mentioned before, this one always bugs me. You're going to think I'm weird. I'm the only person in the room that says this. But when a 10-year-old gets baptized and somebody else goes, "I'm proud of you," I go, "That's weird. Why are you proud of them?" I don't know that I want you to tell my 10-year-old that you're proud of him when he got baptized because he didn't do it. It's not about him. This isn't him. He didn't earn salvation. He didn't merit God's worthy grace. It's great that you say good job or whatever, but this is about Jesus, not about him. I'm afraid that's just a little bitty slip that probably is harmless and means nothing in the life of a 10-year-old, but all of a sudden, if we don't watch out, we'll live our Christian lives like that. Like, man, I can see that you're really doing a lot of good stuff. I'm proud of you. Let me tell you something. If you get all the glory for all the good that happens in your life, guess what you get for all the mistakes and mess-ups? You get all the blame. See, as a leader, sometimes somebody will come to me and say, "Man, that church, that's really doing awesome stuff, Brad. You must be doing an awesome job." And I'm like, "Don't put that on me. I don't want that at all." Why? Because if you put all the good stuff on me, wait till the bad stuff comes around. Let's see who the finger points at then. It'll be at me. It's not me. Okay? You see, we need to celebrate Jesus' redemption more than we're concerned about our success. See, when we see somebody make the right choice, it's fine to say, "I'm thankful for you," or "I'm encouraged by you," or "I'm proud of you," but the bigger issue needs to be, I'm going to worship Jesus because of what he did in you, because of the strength that he gave you, and because of the courage that he gave you, and because of the hope that he gave you. I'm going to worship Jesus because of what he's doing in you. And I'm going to know that were it not for the Holy Spirit in you, you would not have done what you just did. So although I can say I'm proud of you, that's not the big celebration. The big celebration is that I'm thankful for Jesus and his redemptive purposes and story and actions in us. Now, it's one thing for me to say that to you, but it's even more important that we get that in our own lives. It's dangerous to be overly proud of yourself if you forget that you're living a comeback story, not a success story. It's dangerous to be too proud of yourself. In fact, the scripture says things like, pride comes before the fall. Here's what I want to let you know. If you forget that you're living a comeback story and you start thinking that you're living a success story, then what Jesus will let happen in your life is a major fall so that you won't ever forget it again. Paul describes it as a thorn in his flesh. Paul says, there's this thing that keeps making me fall, and I want it to leave, but God won't let it leave. It's still there. And people on our Christian TV shows would have said, well, Paul must not have enough faith. If he can't get rid of that problem or that pain, that's malarkey. That's ridiculous. God put the problem in his life on purpose and left it there for a purpose so that Paul would never forget that Paul's a comeback story, not a success story. You see, we need to celebrate Jesus' redemption more than we ever celebrate someone's success. Number 6, I told you I had 10. We're halfway there, okay? Number 6 is this. We will know the whole person and their story. We'll know the whole person and their story. The whole person and their story. Here's what I mean. When someone among us has a struggle or a moment or a difficult time, here's what happens. A lot of people know that part of the story, but they don't know the whole person. And they get really, really focused on, well, that's the alcoholic, isn't it? Or she did that, or he did that, or they made that, whatever. And they know about that part of the story, but they don't know the whole person. If you want to disciple somebody, care about somebody, love somebody, then you got to be willing to get close enough to that person to know the whole person, not just know that choice, that mistake, that decision, that moment in their story. You see, aren't you guys glad that the people who love us most, they don't just love the good parts of us? You know, they don't just love the bad. They don't just, the people who hate you probably just hate the bad parts of you. They're probably not concerned about knowing the whole person. That's their problem. That's their fault. That's their issue. We want to know the whole person. Now, to be clear, there's a couple hundred people in this room. We're all not going to know all of everybody. There's no way to do that. We're going to have kind of social, casual relationships with the majority of people, but every one of us in this room need a few people who know the whole us. And when I'm in sin, it needs to be those people who help me find it. And when I'm in struggling, it needs to be those people who know the whole me, who help me work through that. And when I'm struggling, it'll be those people that I'll go to and ask them to pray for me or to care for me or to help me. You see, we need to know the whole person and their story. The whole person. This is important. This is really, really important. I'll share you from my perspective. Something I don't do anymore, I used to do, and it never ended well. It was a bad idea then, and I wish somebody had told me not to do it then, so I'd be pastoring a church, and some people would come to me, and they'd say, there's a person in our church, and they got a problem, and you need to go talk to them about it. And I would think, I don't know that. Can you show me a picture of that person? I don't know. I'm sorry, I don't know her. I don't know him. I remember. They sit back in that part of the room, and they're here 2 out of 3 Sundays, and I get it. They come with so-and-so, and they go to lunch with so-and-so, and I kind of know who they are. And you want me to what? Yeah, we need you to sit down and talk to him about his porn addiction. Oh, that's going to go well. Okay, I don't know his last name. And you want me to get that intimate with him and have that kind of conversation. There was a time in my life when I went, all right, man, give me his phone number. I'll call him. I'll sit down and talk with him. Guess how many of those folks came back to church with me the next week? Of course, because I had no right. I didn't know the whole person. I didn't know their story. I just knew what somebody claimed they were doing. That's all I knew. Here's what I have learned, though. When I spend time getting to know somebody, when I spend time with them when they're not in trouble and when they aren't being looked at, and they're, when I just get to know somebody, really love them and get to know the whole person, then all of a sudden when something maybe kind of pops out of that and we realize there's a problem, there's an issue there, all of a sudden I've earned the right to speak into that moment, and they go, you know what? You know the whole me, which means you know warts and all, and you love me and you care about me, so point out my warts. It's okay. Help me see them. I want to deal with this. I want to get better. That's called discipleship. That's what that is. So we disciple people by knowing the whole person and then speaking into their story. If we value comeback stories more so than we do success stories, then we will know the whole person and not just a part of their story. Number 7 is we will honor Jesus by treating people with compassion, acceptance, and truth. And I'm not going to spend too much time on this because I've talked about it a lot lately, but just the process of leading with compassion, offering acceptance, and then speaking the truth. It's a very important process. That's the way Jesus does it over and over and over. Jesus does not walk up to the woman caught in adultery and say, you did it, didn't you? I know you did it. I'm God. You did it. He doesn't start with truth. He starts with compassion. He kneels down beside her. He's there with her. He doesn't have a rock in his hand. See what I'm saying? He's there. He actually stands between her and her accusers and makes them put their rocks down. So she's not alone anymore. Now she's got this guy who's protecting her and caring about her. And then, when he's earned her trust, he says, you need to quit doing what you've been doing. See what I'm saying? You need to stop. You need to change. This idea of compassion, acceptance, truth, it's not Brad's thing. It's a biblical thing. This is just how Jesus operates. And so we need to honor Jesus by treating people that way. That's how you get a comeback story. That's how you get to see a comeback story. Is that when somebody is being offered compassion, treated with acceptance, and then lovingly by someone who knows the whole person, told the truth. Told the truth. If we want to value comeback stories, then number 8, we will be open about our own brokenness that became a comeback story. We'll be open about our own brokenness. I was in a church not long ago. A person came to me and they said, I'd like to give my testimony. And this testimony involves a pretty significant sin in my past and a pretty significant temptation in my present. Okay. They said, I asked another pastor if I could do it, and they told me, no, you shouldn't tell that publicly. The crowd can't handle it. A few years after that opportunity, somebody else was involved in similar sin to the man's story, and it blew up and became a real problem and hurt a lot of people. And the testimony went untold. I'm sharing this with you because I want you to know that your past has a purpose. Your mistakes, your choices has a purpose. See, some of you maybe went through a divorce and now you're remarried, and what you really want to do is forget the first marriage ever happened. And I'm telling you that there's somebody going through a divorce right now that needs you to not forget that. Because they need to know what you went through so that they don't think they're the only person that's ever felt the pain that they're feeling. See, there's a sin in your past or a brokenness or maybe a sin against you where you were hurt and wounded in your background, and it's part of your story, and it's a comeback story, right? Jesus rescued you from that. He brought you out of that. He's working on you and helping you now. That part of your comeback story is the part that reminds the world that it's not a success story, it's a comeback story. And you got to tell that part of the story. I'm not suggesting that you stand on the stage and you tell everybody in the room, but I am suggesting that you not hide it and hope nobody ever knows. I am suggesting that you have eyes open for the people who need to hear that part of your story. Because remember, we're celebrating that story, not just hiding it, definitely not just using it. We want to be open about our own brokenness that became a comeback story. Just think about that, if you would. If we want to value comeback stories, then we're not just talking about other people's comeback stories. We're going to value our own comeback story. Okay? We're going to value our own. Number 9, we will love people who mess up. Now, I'm going to tell you something. It's easier to love people who don't mess up that often than it is to love people who mess up pretty often. It is. But love is not supposed to be easy, is it? There's a lot of folks struggling with a relationship right now because you got in one thinking love was going to be easy, and then you realized loving is not easy. And loving is not an emotion. Loving is not something you feel. Love is something that you do. If I say I love you, that doesn't just mean ooh. When I say I love you, it might involve some like that, but that's a little bit of, most of it is, okay, I'm going to go to battle for you. I'm going to be there for you. I'm going to stick with you. And when you mess up, I'm going to love you even though you're stupid. Ask a wife who's been married more than 10 years, and she knows exactly what I'm talking about. Wives are now going 10 years, 10 weeks. You know what I'm talking about? I get it, okay? I get it. We're going to love people who mess up. Now, get this. This is a reality, okay? Why is it okay for you to gripe at your spouse, but you're not okay with anybody else griping at them? Even though you might be griping about the same stuff. You know why? Because you love them, and you know that your gripe is not going to come in the way of their relationship, and you're hoping to help make them better, but you don't know about that other person. You don't know if they love them or not, right? You don't want them talking about it, even though you might want to. Okay, I'm not encouraging that. I'm just saying I get it. That's because you love that person who's messed up, and you don't know if that other person loves them or not. That's why you're frustrated. That's why you're careful about that. That needs to be a picture of how we treat and love everyone. We love people who mess up. See, if the premise is that I like you because you don't mess up, and I like you because we get along, and I like you because we always agree, and I like you because we're so similar, and I like you because of the fact that, that you don't cause me any headaches, and I like you. There's a lot of folks that people like in their church, but the thing is what's going to happen when that person does cause you a headache? What's going to happen when that person does put you out, does, make the same dish that you made bring to the meal, or does, tell a story on you that shouldn't have been told, or does, what's going to happen when that person that you liked because they were easy to like does something that's not easy to love? What's going to happen is you're going to find out whether or not you love that person. Because if you just like them, it'll be done and over and you'll be finished with them. But if you loved them, you will love people who mess up. Doesn't mean you're okay with their mess up. Doesn't mean you're okay with being stepped on or pushed around or done wrong. It does mean that you love them. You love them. You see, we will love people who mess up. If we want to value comeback stories, we have no choice. We have to love mess ups. We have to. And then let's get to the final reality. Number 10 is this. We will never forget that we are the mess ups. We will never, ever forget. We will never, ever forget that we are mess ups. And here's what I mean. Just a second ago, point number 9, I said we will love people who are messed up, and some of you thought I wasn't talking about you. You were like, it's so nice that our church takes in the messed up people. So good that our church has 8 or 10 messed up people. No, we're all messed up. I'm the biggest one of the bunch. Okay? We're messed up. We are. And we're not success stories, we're comeback stories. Okay? We're not righteous, religious people. We are redeemed, broken people. And in the process, even our name, the Potter's House, is intended to say that we're broken pots that God breaks down and remakes and uses for value. That's what the whole point of the visual is. I want to never, ever, ever, ever forget that we are messed up. You are, and I am, and I'm not trying to put you down. I'm not saying I don't lie. I'm just saying that's the Christian reality. We're messed up people. And if it were not for the redemptive power of the death and resurrection of Jesus, we would all be failure stories. Never forget. Never forget. Would you pray with me?